This is Ambazonia Calling. News, analysis, commentary, opinion, editorials. Ambazonia Calling is a co-production of Africa Freedom Network, the Missions Tribune, and Compass Free Press. Welcome. My name is Ntumfoyn Herbert, and I bring revolutionary greetings from our studios in Washington, D.C. to all of you, friends of Ambazonia and fellow Ambazonians on Ground Zero and across the globe.
Battle lines are drawn between La République du Cameroon colonial forces and Amba restoration fighters over authority and control of the territory. I am innocent here.
They may have wanted to make us look dirty, but they ended up telling the world what they do for a living. Trash men.
There are enemies within the Ambazonia Liberation War who are fighting mightily hard to sabotage our struggle, and we are doing them the dishonor they deserve in Nyamfuka of the Week. This is Veronique Vertimfe.
Hey coach, this is Eric Ate. I want to first of all let you know that I do support the Swiss process.
The kernel of the matter is French. This is the monk.
This is about 10 civilians that have been killed this week. We have been burying.
We will hang them in the middle of the city. This is Dr. Cho Ayaba.
We confirm to you that the mayor of the BOYO City Council, Patrick Ekema Esunge, is dead.
Cette guerre sera une boucherie où va se noyer l'armée camerounaise et elle finira par la victoire de la sécession.
I am a concerned Ambazonian who believes without freedom, death is better than life. This is Ochiba Nelson.
My name is Babafo. Don't bring on us some very good, exciting news. I say we don't get our own telecommunication.
There is no country from the 1990s till now that had independence without going through a mediated settlement process.
So the opportunity is real because we gave our accord to the Swiss government that we are ready to pursue a negotiated settlement. And they gave us the same assurances that the government of the Republic has done the same.
This is edition 67 of Ambazonia Calling, coming to you this Sunday, the 27th of October 2019.
Oh, freedom, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, freedom is coming, oh yes, I'm free.
This is an edition with the full hour of The Devil Unmasked, an unprecedented interview on the issues of negotiation and mediation. Stay tuned. Ambazonia Calling. While support continues to grow for the internationally brokered negotiations without preconditions led by the Swiss government, a handful of Ambazonian liberation movements continue to disparage the initiative. But citizens are rising to the defense of this initiative. Our editorialist for the day is Eric Ate. These are excerpts from a voice note he left with his friend, Coach.
Hey coach, this is Eric Ate. The people who are going to Switzerland right now, the groups who have signed up to this deal to go to Switzerland and try to seek a negotiated settlement to our problem, are not just going there to say, hey, you know what, we agree to everything that you tell us. They are going there to make their points known. And these are men and women who have given all to Ambazonia. There is no part of me that even think that any of these people, there is nothing within me that tells me that they will ever compromise Ambazonia. These are people who believe in the total independence of our country. And I believe in their intellect. So if someone sits somewhere and thinks these people could be manipulated and betray Ambazonia in any way, then I'm not going to sit here and adhere to that kind of criticism. Why? Because you don't sit on social media, refuse to attend a process, and then sit behind and criticize those who have actually taken the courage to go. Get someone over there, or you yourself, get yourself over there and sit with your brothers and sisters. Look at HD in the eye. Look at the Swiss whoever the Swiss government sent over there to talk to you guys and tell them what your concerns are. We have to be very careful how we proceed in this revolution. Our boys are doing a fabulous job, but you know as well as I know that times in war, no one is a winner. We are not going to keep defending ourselves against La Republique without taking the initiative to find a negotiated settlement to this conflict that would ensure our independence. I know that a lot of people are very good at looking at things, not really understanding them, but coming forth with very disturbing analysis about it. Okay, for instance, there was a time when Ayabacho said the Norwegian government has agreed to mediate between La Republique and us. But you know very well that no one can impose a mediator on any party, any warring party. Anyone in this revolution, including Ayabacho, Jomba Akoro, anybody, you know, all these other people, Sisiku and Yerima, all of them. Anyone who thinks the Swiss process is not good enough and think Norway or America or any other country in the world or any entity whatsoever is more qualified than the Switzerland, the Swiss government, and HD, should first of all ask those people to go to La Republique and get their endorsement. Because La Republique has given a verbal endorsement. And the Swiss process is the only process that is viable right now. You know, hailed by every major country in the world, including the United Nations. We've seen evidence of that. We cannot just do things based on our emotions. When we let our emotions act without the benefit of intellect, it kind of like, you know what I mean, makes us look like really stupid. La Republique has not given, as some say, a written agreement that, hey, I agree to this process. But they have given a verbal one. And you and I know very well that if a country like La Republique du Cameroon, who still believes that Ambazonia is part of their country, decides that, hey, you know what, we're going to tell the Swedes verbally that we are okay with them mediating a peaceful solution to this problem, then that should be good enough. We Ambazonians cannot just walk away from that because someone says, oh, La Republique should sign a paper saying they endorse the process. We have seen evidence. We've seen the Swiss ambassador going to meet Diongote. We've seen him come out and talk about the process. We've seen the people of HD in La Republique. So those who want somebody else to be the mediator should go to La Republique too. Let Abiaba get the Norwegian government to go to La Republique and get some kind of agreement from La Republique that if they, the Norwegians, become the mediator, La Republique will show up to the table. So please, you know what I mean? I just hope that this voice note that I'm leaving you in response to the voice note you sent me will kind of shed some light in the way I see things. And it's not just me. You know, lots of Ambazonians see things the way I do. We cannot continue to bash this process if we cannot find someone else who can do the job. So I suggest that anybody in this revolution who call themselves a leader should go and join their brothers and sisters, sit on that table and ask the tough questions. Because those who have gone there are people of integrity. Trust them. I trust the power of their intellect. I trust the fact that they are true revolutionaries. Look, if you have any power to convince others, tell them to go to Switzerland. Let them join their brothers and sisters so that we can have one unified team talking for us. And if we have to walk out of Switzerland, it should be a collective effort. It should be because we do not like what we hear or what we heard. Not that we sit on social media and point the finger at those who are actually trying. Let everyone continue contributing to their local government and county structures so that our boys can continue being able to defend themselves against these La Republique terrorists. But at the same time, we have to continue the diplomatic process in order to portray La Republique as the party who only wants to kill people. And to make La Republique understand that this conflict is not an internal conflict within La Republique. Ambazonia is not part of La Republique. Ambazonia is a country of its own. If La Republique is trying to run away from this process, it's because La Republique know that legality is not on its side. And so those who are castigating this attempt to bring La République to the international stage to talk to us are actually enabling La République to run away and maintain its position that the conflict between them and Ambazonia is an internal conflict. The one thing that we should all try to do is to make La République to understand that we are a country of our own and that they are not qualified to solve this problem because it is not a problem within their territory. It is a problem between two independent territories. This is Eric Ate.
Ana figu mama pina kafi stop jam chimala ama yenyama bonta ibusula lilina fata su bonta. That's what the king said. That's what the king said to the messenger. Tum tuma bena bwebo ala anyama bozu zento. This lion down the valley. I know the shepherd them divani. Hey. Leaving the lion and the lamb with the broken leg. Left at the mercy for the lion just to chop it up. She got her back against the wall. She had to fight for her life. She had to stand, she couldn't die without the fight. Whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah.
Innocent Jay is here. He's got the first part of our news wrap-up for the week.
October 25, 2019.
Abdul Karim Ali, renowned Muslim scholar of the Bible and Spitfire Ambazonian activist, has slipped out a note to Ambazonians from his prison room at the dreaded said,
Dear Southern Cameroonians, we did not choose to be Southern Cameroonians. Southern Cameroons did not choose to host us. God chose us for that land and that land for us to sojourn in. Justice for that land and her children is primordial.
The crisp note calls on Ambazonians to keep their eyes on the prize, with independence as the only just outcome, no matter the price that he has to pay, including death, if he must die for Southern Cameroons.
This is a cause I have dedicated my life for. Our people must get justice, inshallah, if God wills. If it means dying for it, may He accept our dedication. God bless Southern Cameroons. God bless you. Abdul Karim Ali, from said.
The activist was arrested in Yaoundé by plainclothes security officers shortly upon exiting the Swiss embassy in Yaoundé, where he had reportedly gone to brief the Swiss ambassador of his sojourn in Switzerland for the internationally supported mediation process led by the Swiss in partnership with Humanitarian Dialogue, HD.
This is Dr. Cho Ayaba. Many people have been asking in the past days if there is a 3 weeks lockdown, and I have said no. We haven't called for any 3 weeks of lockdown. As I explained before, this is excessive.
It was a horrible scene at Ngolobolo, a neighboring village to Konye subdivision in Meme division of the Southwest region. A deadly gun battle between separatist fighters and the military as Shambalen Tuntong, senior divisional officer for Meme division, moves to install the newly appointed divisional officer for Konye subdivision.
Battle lines continue to be drawn between La République du Cameroun colonial forces and Amba restoration fighters over authority and control of the territory.
This is about 10 civilians that have been killed this week. We have been burying. Every day they'll come and kill one. This is the result of the dialogue. This one was shot by the military today, 25th of October. These are the tires of the military. Let me show you the bullet. A clear evidence. These are the bullets. Let me pick one. Look at military bullets.
Up and down and all across Ambazonia, colonial forces of La République du Cameroon in armored convoys are fighting through rough terrain in a bid to install colonial administrators.
Blue and black arena E, that is Cameroon military. They work, they map the checkpoints, map where the Amber boys are, and then they send the shooting squad to come. And that's how, surprisingly, what has been happening. This is me, Major General Vela. God bless.
In Bui State Northern Zone, unconfirmed reports hold that from Yame to Kikaikom and from Ba to Milov, La République du Cameroon lost at least 30 soldiers.
Today, we lost almost 5 guys at SOP. We lost soldiers at SOP. They have been reported for me from Tavera, from Mivum.
Welcome to Douala, specifically here at the military hospital in Bonanjo. We are at the mortuary, and the major information here is
a sworn enemy of an independent southern Cameroons, aka Ambazonia, one we often described on this show as a school dropout, certificate thieving promoter-in-chief of we versus them in relations between Ambazonians from the southern zone and those of the northern zone. The dishonorable Lord Mayor of Boya, Patrick Ekema, has died.
We confirm to you that the mayor of the Boya City Council, Patrick Ekema Esunge, is dead.
Although the cause of death has not been determined, a neighbor with inside information says he suffered from a massive heart attack while attending a funeral service and was rushed to a local hospital in Cameroon's colonial economic capital, Douala, where he died.
The corpse is directly behind us at the mortuary, the hospital mortuary here.
Yes, Ekema. Patrick is dead.
Yes. Other sources claimed he died from poisoning. Even a group known as Ambazonian Tomboys has claimed mission accomplie, stating that they had been working on a covert operation for over 3 months.
Family sources confirmed to us that he died of cardiac arrest.
What is a known fact is that the late Lord Mayor Patrick Ekema of Boya Municipality had no shortage of political enemies, including his open disdain for the political elite within his very own CPDM party in FAKO and the family of the young man that he shot and killed at point-blank range at the beginning of the Ambazonian Revolutionary War in 2017.
I say, baby, I say, I don't call him. I used that repeat on last go. I mean, toast me for ye. Most celebrate that my money die. Me die not sweet so.
Now we keep you now. Then you might make a joy.
I say then we celebrate my die like we celebrate Jesus Christ's birth.
The next person now.
Na tanganji.
I just say na ita choruma.
Well, anyhow, they fit come bracket.
Before the grandmaster
before grandmaster they follow after. Pray no, they'll go one after the other.
No, that's small, and then if they go prepare grandmasters.
Yes, the small disciples there. They go for FAKO before they go prepare grandmaster a place.
Cheers.
So you get us. I bet kiss me again. Sir, me die not sweet so.
A little over a year ago, in what was claimed to be an attack to his life in a public space in Douala, Patrick Ekema stated that the political elite within his party would take him out before Amber fighters did.
This is Dr. Cho Ayaba. That is why we have also intensified attacks on their governors and their SDOs. It's just a matter of time before we get them. The Ntumos, the Lele Afriques, and the others. And as I have said in the past days, we will hang them in the middle of the city. They have a choice to join the resistance or be captured and publicly hung in front of our population for the crime of genocide and the imposition of pain and suffering on our population.
In the eye of the public, he single-handedly torpedoed the Cardinal Tumi Anglophone General Conference that was tentatively announced to hold in Boya, dismissing and making light of the otherwise heavyweight and highly esteemed Cardinal.
Father Lord, I thank you, Holy Ghost, Papa God. The small beginning that way that innocent death in Northwest Asawes, they have hold that diamond
national dialogue. They have decided it is only God slap Papa God. The first person is Ekema Patrick. He has been slapped in Jesus' name. And as a effect, the mouth made him. Father Lord, may that slap move from municipality to regional level. I said the governor of Northwest and Southwest, they shall take Holy Ghost slap in Jesus' name. When he leaves Northwest and Southwest, O King of Glory, he shall go to Yaoundé. Atanganji will take 2 slaps. Papai. Issa Chiruma will take 2 slaps. Papai. Father Lord, may they die by slap in Jesus' name. May they die by slap in Jesus' name. May they come and swallow the fufu that they have caught them. May they come and swallow the fufu that they have caught them. Father Lord, I say may they die by slap in Jesus' name.
His signature campaign was against ghost towns in his city, going as far as sealing storefronts, mostly of those he dismissed as come-no-go graffitis, while calling on them to pack their belongings and go back to wherever they came from. He had fraudulently obtained certifications and recognition from universities that pulled them back once he was exposed, including from the local University of BOYO. Shortly before his death, Lord Mayor Patrick Ikema is reported to have claimed that he had received CFA 500 million francs from the government of Cameroon to fund his own private militia in staving off the inevitable pro-independence campaign that has BOYO as its final destination. Sparse supporters called Ikema Patrick a fearless, bold, and unrepentant nationalist on Facebook. Sons and daughters of BOYO State in the northern zone are expressing outrage that the fund of sapped the event of the installation of the colonial administrator without his people and was exposed and literally used as a cover for the colonial administration and the terrorist forces of La République du Cameroun. Noteworthy was the absence of the colonial governor, Lele Lafrique, who has become a prime target of attacks by Amba Defense Forces, including attacks 2 weeks ago, during which his convoy came under severe gunfire in NGOKETUNJIA. Early but unconfirmed reports had alleged that he was severely hit in the attack. You are listening to Ambazonia Calling, your space for educated news analysis, informed opinions and commentary towards the recognition of a free, independent Ambazonia. I am Innocent Chia. Stay with us.
What Cameroon has done to us, I want you never to forget. The pain they have brought to bear on this generation, I want you never to forget. Not out of hate, but so that the next generation will remember and make sure they do the things they are supposed to do, never to go through this again.
I will continue to play my part to ask the people of Southern Cameroon to take their revolution into their hands and continue the fight to liberate themselves.
I'm sorry to say, because of France's policies in Africa, in French Africa, the state of La République du Cameroun do not have any pressure on them to find a way to resolve this issue, because they are always thinking that no matter what happens, France will always be there to give them coverage.
Still ahead in this edition, we have The Devil Unmasked with Professor Emmanuel Tatamenta. We have a winner of the Nyamfuka of the Week. And we are not done until you have heard our letter to Joshua. So stay tuned, kick back, relax, and enjoy Ambazonia Calling. Don't go anywhere, Innocent. You've got the second part of our news wrap-up. But just before we get there, there's some breaking news here. A former colonial minister in Biya's regime, Gaga Amanaji, has just released a biting critique of his government, announcing doomsday for him and victory for Ambazonia.
L'État unitaire, devenu
The
franchement
criminal
criminel,
nature of the unitary state sparked the independence restoration quest in Ambazonia, and that quest will never die because the unitary system has never been disbanded. According to Gaga Amanaji, Cameroon should have known from the very beginning that anthropologically it is impossible to keep a unitary state there. After a worldwide study of separatist movements, Cameroon cannot prevent the separation which is underway, which will bring the country to its knees and bury it like an earthworm. Those who let the country slip into this are real criminals. According to Gaga Amanaji, Cameroon has neither the economic, political, financial, or diplomatic means to militarily defeat the restoration of independence quest in Ambazonia. It is madness, he adds, to continue with the military misadventure, because it is no longer possible for Cameroon to regain control of southern Cameroon. Gaga Amanaji warns further, this war will be a slaughterhouse for Cameroonian security forces, and it will end in victory for restoration. This is a definite verdict from Gaga Amanaji. The southern Cameroons will never ever leave another day under the control of colonial Cameroon.
This is Ambazonia Calling.
We had one on holy prayer in our first news wrap-up. Now this is another one. It's Sunday, people.
Father, anyone who is behind the killings in the nation of Cameroon, Father, kill that person. Father, anyone behind this that is excited to see lives wasted, waste that person.
We're back now with Innocent here. He's got the second part of our news wrap-up for the week.
When the people will rise. Another prophecy of Honorable Joseph Weber has come to pass following the anchoring early in the week of a French naval ship purportedly carrying over 180 combatants and other French intelligence personnel.
Yeah, Colonel, afternoon. How are you? Hope you did fine. Yeah, I get some information, very vital information now, where some captain don't tell me, some colonel, say then give a spray. These white people with the council, then give a spray, amber cans them, spray them, burn them, spray them, burn them, spray them, burn them. Any place with a suspect that's not come, they'll go spray them for night with a helicopter, then burn them. Please, make me this information go on, I beg you.
Honorable Weber, in his iconic 2 cubes of sugar speech, December 13th, 2016, prayed to remind the Speaker of the Colonial Parliament, Cavaye Yege Jibril, and the colonial French enterprise that the minority English-speaking Western Cameroons, as he called it back then, could not be dissolved or subdued even if the entire French army combined forces with La République du Cameroun terrorist forces to fight against Ambazonia.
Because you have your army of occupation out in West Cameroon, you believe that when the people will rise, even if you took the whole of the French army and added to yours, you will never bring them down.
Respective Ambazonian group leaders are crisscrossing different markets with fundraising schemes. Amber bonds, amber coins, amber pins, amber CIDs. Proponents are inviting nationalists to pick and choose any project, so long as it funds Ground Zero and, if possible, fund all 4.
We can do that by owning a freedom pin. Yes, get your freedom pin. The freedom pin will prevent our women and children from being raped.
Meantime, strident voices continue appealing for a central purse as they are calling for central command that will legitimately, strategically, and conscientiously lead the war of independence to a victorious end.
If you see time don't reach, man don't run. Long hand and short hand, they don't separate. Time don't go, man let me left. Nothing don't change.
Allegations and speculations are rife of an army of Fulanese that La République du Cameroun has deployed in Ambazonia, particularly in Bui State, in Cambe, and as well as in other areas where spirited amber defenses are keeping La République du Cameroun completely off balance. Reportedly hired from Nigeria by Cameroon, the said Fulani fighters have also completed training in traditional warfare, have been equipped by La République du Cameroon, and allegedly possess amulets that match and supersede the Odeshi of Amba fighters. Meantime, midweek in Batibo, a woman of God carrying a peace plant had the message from God for Amba boys. Said she, God has already granted victory to Ambazonians in the spiritual realm, but Amba boys are called upon to drop their Odishi, the equivalent of the worship of Baal for Israelis after God had rescued them from 400 years of slavery in Egypt. Across social media platforms, talking heads are rejecting the woman of God.
Give him the means to do that job.
Calling on Ambazonians to support the revolution by enabling the fighters on the ground with more firepower.
The FIFA war na bong bong. You know how many trillions of dollars the Republic has used to fight this war, yet they are still failing. And we will contribute $100 and making as if we have given the world we have given all our money to the thing. Master.
Several young men and women have allegedly been dispatched to Ambazonia by La République du Cameroun. In multitudes of social media postings over the course of the week, pictures were circulated of young female soldiers of La République du Cameroun who have been identified in plain clothes and reported to be acting as call prostitutes with the goal of identifying Amba camps. As Samson fell to Dalila, Amba fighters are cautioned to stay away from strange women because they will kill them and attack the heart of the revolution. Finally, Lukoil, listed by Forbes magazine as the 7th biggest Russian oil company, has signed an agreement with Cameroon to possibly reconstruct and modernize the national oil company, popularly known by its French acronym SONARA. The deal, an outcome of Cameroon's participation at the recently ended Russia-Africa summit, is seen by some observers as further evidence that Cameroon is not ready to pack out of Ambazonia or is investing in Ambazonia as part of a long-term bargaining chip where proceeds will be split by both Ambazonia and colonial Cameroon. Innocentia, Ambazonia Calling.
We have got a real estate deal made in heaven. If you are pre-qualified and are interested in a single-family home in the Silver Spring area, contact ambercalling@yahoo.com. Write to ambercalling@yahoo.com. Only serious prospective buyers are welcome. Over the weekend, and in reaction to the release of a collection of nasty audio clips put together very clearly to stoke quarrels among leaders of the liberation movements that have endorsed the Swiss-led process, two of the leaders who were tongue-lash in those clips, Comrade Sako Ikome and Comrade Mark Chaps, released statements to fellow Team Ambazonia members. In his statement, Comrade Sako shrugged off the attacks, calling those who had tried so hard to dig up and share the dirt trash collectors. Trashmen, he calls them. Here's the statement from Comrade Sako.
My dear partners of destiny, fellow ACT members, our assignment at this time must be purpose-driven. We're here because a greater force has randomly selected us and put us in the same room despite our fundamental differences in character, vision, and abilities. Hence, it is not by a certain qualification that others outside don't have. It is not because we are the best of friends or love each other flawlessly. There is a mystery around our common survival as an endangered species that should make our bond an existential seal. As I said, if we know we are really drowning, nobody, I repeat, nobody, can discourage us from swimming. Our restoration has birthed this new family of ours where we are angry, but we will not abandon. where mistakes are made, but we are not shattered, where we all manifest our human weaknesses, yet still hold our heads high and our hands together to pray for each other, where we fall or probably are pushed down, but pick ourselves up, beat off the dust, and smile with those who are laughing at us, telling ourselves the devil is a liar. In every of our houses, there is some hidden trash somewhere, and that is the proof that we are all the same, that we are humans. I have mine too, that you don't know. Those who came to us just to find our indoor trash to take to the world outside are called trash men. They may have wanted to make us look dirty, but they ended up instead telling the world what they do for a living and are helping us in an uncanny way to dump our trash outside our homes where it should be. So let the trash men dig harder, make our house cleaner, our bond stronger, and our resolve even more sincere. Tell the trash men what unites true Amazonian leaders is bigger and greater than what we have said or ever said publicly or privately against each other. If our celebrity trash men are angels or were angels, let them publish all their complete audio conversations and chats or submit their phones for an open search without editing, without deleting anything. So Mula Akwanga, Ni Kometa, Ntumfoyn, and all the rest, let's brace for a long walk together to a free Ambazonia. As Niger them say, no shaking. The worst blow to the enemy of our freedom is succeeding together despite their attempts to crush our selfless efforts. This is our calling at this very crucial moment of our restoration quest. So independence now, let politics come later. God bless you, and God bless the Federal Republic of Ambazonia.
Ambazonia Calling. You are in the heart of the news shrine. Call us the Kalakuta Republic of Commentary, Opinion, and Editorials. Mark Jebs was one of the leaders cited in the audio messages that were rolled out. He sent out this message galvanizing Ambazonians and asking them to focus and forget the distractions.
I am responding to audio messages that have been put out there to portray certain leaders as disparaging of their fellow comrades. While I will not go as far as making analysis of such videos, because I believe they are a total distraction, we have a common purpose and a common goal, which is to restore our homeland. We are fulfillers of destiny, and that in itself does not mean the absence of imperfections. We have been taken out of wherever we may have found ourselves and brought into the fore and center of this liberation quest, in order that we may play a role that is uniquely akin to our abilities and God-given talents to advance this sole purpose. In this work, our differences remain, challenges arise, we might not always agree, but we are committed to the same cause. In the strength of Daniel, who stared down lions and a fiery furnace, let us stare down the challenges that come our way, knowing that we are fighting the good fight. Our conviction in the quest for a negotiated settlement, albeit the Swiss process, is unwavering, and we will press forward. I will press forward towards the goal, because our very survival depends on it. Let bygones be bygones, and let our actions speak louder and drown the naysayers and tempters of faith. I will not let those who use those words to divide us to prevail. I have no hard feelings against Comrade Akwanga, Dr. Akwanga. I have no hard feelings against people who have committed to put aside differences, to put aside whatever past trepidations we may have had for each other, and to work continuously together for a common purpose. We understand that we have a common enemy, and we need to defeat that enemy to succeed. Thank you.
In other place. Just before Letter to Joshua, you have an unprecedented devil unmasked. Everything you ever wanted to know about mediation and negotiations. Stay with us. A supporter of Team Ambazonia added his voice to the mix. Here is Uchiba Nelson from out of Los Angeles, California.
I am a concerned Ambazonian who believes without freedom, death is better than life. I want to thank you all for your relentless efforts in trying to secure a free and independent Ambazonia for our people. However, I want to draw your attention to a grave danger our revolution is facing. Earlier this year, when all of us were yearning for unity and collaboration, Ayuk Tabe launched an effort from the jail to divide the IG. On October 22nd, in an enlarged Zoom meeting attended by Carson Anyangwe, Dr. Fontem, and Akuru, Jesse Etambi suggested if ACT leaders in the likes of Dr. Sako and Chris Anu are obstacles to the Ayuk Tabe and Ayaba's agenda, the only thing they can do is to sideline them or completely eliminate them out of the revolution and this world. This was later on confirmed by Abu Free of Agov C, who also reiterated their commitment to eliminate Dr. Sako from this world. During the meeting, Akuru suggested if the ACT leaders are not open, and since Dr. Sako's power is coming from the LGS, it will be a good thing for them to infiltrate the LGS and obtain signatures from sympathizers who will then petition the Swiss Foreign Secretary that those who are in ACT do not represent Ambazonia, therefore cannot speak on behalf of Ambazonia. And that if that one fails, the only option for them is to crash the Swiss talks, irrespective of the fact that the international community is in support. Their recent actions do not reflect that of those genuinely fighting for a free and independent Ambazonia. I therefore encourage you to forget these detractors. Carry on the great jobs you are doing for Ambazonia. These detractors are the same group led by a certain Eric Tato and Yerima, who endorsed La République dialogue and insisted Ayuk Tabe should represent them. They also embraced the BAS movement, celebrated U.S. Resolution 358 calling for federation. This cabal also embraced and endorsed the services of Ambassador Cohen to be the voice of Ambazonia. This same ambassador later on told the whole world, even in this 2019, that Ambazonia is not viable and ready for independence, and that we should manage a federation under the canopy of a special status with La République. God forbid. Remember, the special status was first propagated by Kamto and then embraced by La République. While we continue to fund our self-defense forces, we also raise our hopes for the recognition of Ambazonia on you sitting down face to face with La République in the presence of the international community and Switzerland. The collaboration in the ACT is what we have been yearning and pleading for the past 3 years. Therefore, focus and do not worry to respond to these detractors. We do not expect angels out of you. Your job is to continue to make progress. Our job is to continue to support you. For Ambazonians are with you, And even more importantly, God is with you. This is Ochiba Nelson.
Something is killing me slowly, and I'm feeling so lonely. But this thing I must to talk, oh. All my people, they for bush, oh. And our children are they go for school, oh. But nobody fit to talk, oh. We get to plenty, so many things where we really want to complain to you. See these people where they kill us, not the people where they get for protect me, yeah. Our children, they for prison. Our leaders, they for prison. Now they calling for dialogue. Now who and who go talk, oh. That's why we pray to God. Heal our land, heal our land, heal our land. Console our people are dying, and our mothers are crying. Heal our land, heal our land, heal our land. Console our children are dying, and our mothers are crying. Yeah, but I don't know what's up, oh, at all, oh. This war is bigger, and one man of it put a stop, oh. So make we put them all together, oh. I see plenty people don't die, and the house they went up, and I saw the people they need so far. Everybody running helter skelter, the children they suffer, there is no food and shelter. Our children down the suffer, while the leaders living la vida loca. Yeah, so now we go so Cameroon do. We get to plenty, so many things where we really want to complain to you. That see these people where they kill us, not the people where they get for protect we. Yeah. Oh, no. Our children they for prison, our leaders they for prison. Hey. But they've been calling for dialogue. Now who and who got talk, oh. That's why we pray to God. Heal our land, heal our land, heal our land. Console our people are dying, and our mothers are crying. Heal our land, heal our land, heal our land. Console our children are dying, and our mothers are crying. Okay, let's take a minute of silence for our brothers and sisters who have lost their life in the struggle, and our mothers who are living in the bushes, our children suffering in the bushes with no food and no shelter. We pray that the peace return in our land so that we can live in peace forever. That's what we cry for. We get to plenty, so many things where we really want to complain to you. See these people where they kill us, not the people where they get for protect me. Yeah. Our children they for prison, our leaders they for prison. But they've been calling for dialogue. Now who and who got talk, oh. That's why we pray to God. Heal our land, heal our land, heal our land. Console our people are dying, and our mothers are crying. Heal our land, heal our land, heal our land. Console our children are dying, and our mothers are crying. Say we get to plenty, so many things that we really want to complain to you, Daddy.
In the war situation in which Ambazonians find themselves, the tendency is to blame your comrade instead of blaming the enemy. The monk from Ibali Kumato says, remember who your enemy is. Blame the French.
When we blame fellow citizens for actions or inactions in this crisis, let's ask ourselves the following question. Is their crime worse than the French? And that is just sticking to the root and kernel of the problem as I see it. Anyone blaming any citizen of Ambazonia for whatever reasons is knowingly or unknowingly blaming the victim. Some citizens live in fear and will only stick their heads out, unfortunately, for the very abusers of our people. what has caused the crisis. It is not Ambazonia citizens. Not one citizen can be blamed, if you ask me. Each one of them is standing on the land of our ancestors as a witness of the history that created the state of British Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia, which was never colonized by France and has never declared war on any of its neighbors, but has always sought for compromise with Nigeria in the 1950s and attempts ad nauseum with FRANCO-CAMEROUN to implement a reasonable system of governance. But the arrogance and intransigence of Franco-Negro Bantus has morphed into the killing fields of our homeland. Should I blame a fellow citizen if they get mad and behave irrationally? Obviously and logically, no. Niet nada. The kernel of the matter is French. Try this. Take France out of the African equation and see it balance. The kink is this. It is the Franco-Cameroonese who have to do the heavy lifting of peeling Franco-Cameroun away from France. Will they? Can they do it? Meanwhile, we citizens of Ambazonia are caught in the fray, and our space and people provide a distraction from the real problem as France and Franco-Cameroun play the clock. This is the monk for Ambazonia Calling.
This is a lesson that every Ambazonian should know by heart from real politics. The world won't roll over just to please the heart to satisfy in the ranks of our people. Those who choose to be spoilers will be free to do as they please.
I recognize the fact that even those I consider to be egoistic or to be selfish, I recognize the fact that the intent is good. People simply think I have the best route to BOYO, I have the shortest way, the easiest way. I recognize all that.
The search for a completely neutral country will never be successful because there is no such thing as a perfectly neutral country to serve as mediator.
We should trust in our cause that is embedded in truth and it's God ordained, and we should hope for the best while expecting challenges.
Our job is to ensure that the negotiations work for what we seek, and that our leaders and negotiating team do not sign onto any deal that falls short of outright independence for our homeland. In other words, our destiny is in our hands, not in the hands of the mediator.
Where is the war in Southern Cameroon? Is the war at La République? No. So who has crossed borders? La République du Cameroon. They need to ask La République du Cameroon to cease fire, because who also drew first blood? La République du Cameroon. So you can ask someone defending to stop violence.
The job of Ambazonians today is to make the Swiss-led process be the equivalent of the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, whose implementation by the United Nations culminated in the independence of South Sudan in July 2011.
Drum roll, please. And welcome to our Nyamfoka of the Week segment. We don't do foolish, but when there are capital fools out there, we make it our duty to find them, and every week we crown one of them the Nyamfoka of the Week. We've gotten to that point in the program where we review the kings and queens of foolish for this week. Here's Veronique Vatimfe.
Finishing in third place this week is a man who should consider himself blessed by God and cursed by his loyalty to the genocidal regime of Paul Biya. A man who values his government delegate position more than his own life, and definitely more than the lives of his people. Burnt alive like Mami Api, or slain in infancy like Baby Mata. Usually when a man goes down on one knee, or perhaps both knees, it is for something positive, respectful, exciting, like proposing to the love of his life or praying to Papa God. Not this water boy for the Biya regime, also known as the Bamenda government delegate, Vincent Ntumfoyn. With the sorry flag of his colonizer tied to his waist like a woman going to a cry-die, Vincent Ntumfoyn crawled on his knees in front of a scanty motley crowd of sellouts in Bamenda, literally begging Ambazonia Calling to enshrine his name in the big book of foolishness, by even dreaming that Ambazonians will ever give up their fight for independence. Vincent Ntumfoyn can spare us the crocodile tears and accept his third place finish this week on the crown of shame, the Nyamfuka of the week. Nyamfuka them all. The runners-up for the crown of foolish this week are non-entities working in similar roles as the third place finisher. They all are slaves of the colonizers, and they include other government delegates, lord mayors, some of whom are dropping and dying like flies. They include divisional and subdivisional officers, colonial governors, and sell-out chiefs who are going around wooing and bribing Amber boys to drop their weapons and make public declarations to that effect. The only real or concrete thing they offer any Amber boy who surrenders is death. If you doubt us, ask the self-declared surrendered Amber boy of now blessed memory, Polycarp Ikom in Womb. Barely hours after his primetime disarmament performance at the grandstand in Womb in MENCHUM state, his body was found with a bullet put neatly through his forehead and his remains partially mutilated. These slaves will find new Amber boys who will do such a performance if they can show us a snake with hairy skin. The colonizers just shot his own self-proclaimed disarmament program in the foot. And those working on implementing it, colonial governors, lord mayors, even those who have dropped dead already, along with divisional and subdivisional officers and sell-out chiefs across Ambazonia, are this week's runners-up winners for the crown of shame, the Nyamfuka of the week. Nyamfuka them all. John Ba Akuru accomplished the shameless act of stitching together audio from old telephone conversations he had with Kometa and Akwanga. Recordings made in the bad old days when there was still a lot of bad blood among these fellow comrades in the struggle. John's effort was to try to paint the picture that they are slinging mud at each other, even though united in support of the Swiss-led process. Just 1 week ago, John Ba Akuru hosted a Zoom town hall meeting during which they discussed the need to crash or sabotage the Swiss-led process. And this week, he launched his first attempt at bringing down the effort with those so-called Tell It All productions. John Ba Akuru and the entire cabal, fond of doctoring things to make believe, will not succeed in fooling the people of Ambazonia. ACT leaders are united and Team Ambazonia is here to stay. The person who is not well and is failing bigly is John Ba Akuru, who is this week's undisputable winner of the crown of shame, the Nyamfuka of the week. Nyamfuka them all. This is Veronique Vertimfe for Ambazonia Calling.
Ambazonia Calling. You are in the heart of the news shrine. Call us the Kalakuta Republic of commentary, opinion, and editorials. Welcome to our special interview segment, The Devil Unmasked, The Truth Out. Welcome to The Devil Unmasked. It is a tough job to deal with pro-independence negotiations, and that includes before parties go into negotiations, during their participation in negotiations, and in the aftermath, when a deal has been sealed and when the parties must sell the outcome to stakeholders. Staying together through such a tough process is itself a major challenge. And looking back in history today on Ambazonia Calling, we are receiving a global expert on the subject. So our guest here today on The Devil Unmasked is Professor Elizabeth Vidal-Darkhan. She's worked on all continents. She knows her stuff, and she brings a lot today for us on Ambazonia Calling. She's agreed to a full hour of interview. It may become our longest interview here on The Devil Unmasked. Please kick back, relax. She brings a lot of education. Just take it in. Professor Elizabeth Vidal-Darkhan has studied and dealt with over 30 independence movements and independence quests around the globe. She'll be walking us through what she and many of her colleagues call the 6 cardinal sins, the 6 deadliest sins any independence movement can commit when it comes to mediation or negotiations. Let me start us off here with a few short questions. The first one here is, what for you is the greatest challenge for pro-independence movements such as the Ambazonian groups fighting for independence in the Cameroons right now?
You have no confidence that the other party is engaging in good faith, and in fact you're probably relatively confident that they would never negotiate the specific thing that you are calling for, which they would never agree on paper to independence.
Sorry for interrupting you so quickly, but I'm glad that you're mentioning here right at the beginning of the show that the government party is unlikely to put on paper that they're granting independence. As a matter of fact, it's hard for them to put on paper that they're even negotiating, because it is the equivalent of the surrender papers. Again, we know that the government party comes with no good faith at all. In spite of this, there are qualities that the Ambazonian liberation movements need to have so that they're a viable partner at the negotiations. Could you mention some of them?
The rigor of knowing what you want and how to get it and how to structure yourselves, with the need to improvise in a context in which there isn't good faith with the other side. You don't know, really none of us really knows if they're going to engage, how they'll engage, when they'll engage.
Across the world, what you've seen is no matter the deal, no matter how good, no matter how bad, there will be people who will be happy and there will be people who are disgruntled.
No peace agreement is ever welcomed by everybody. There has never been one.
Then what, in your opinion, is the golden rule if you go into negotiations?
The iron law of mediation, of negotiation, is that no negotiation can succeed if the real parties aren't at the table.
So your promise to me was you're going to walk us through the 6 deadliest sins. Could we begin? What is your first?
The first one, and maybe the most common one, is the unreality trap. The unreality trap is when the negotiating team and the negotiating positions doesn't reflect the underlying power balance, because in the end, negotiations reflect real power balances. Sometimes people object when I say that, and give counterexamples. For example, the agreement between the apartheid regime in South Africa and the African National Congress.
So in clear terms, what you're saying is that the African National Congress did not get a negotiation and a deal from the apartheid regime because it got militarily stronger or it got stronger on the ground.
Of course, the African National Congress was much weaker than the apartheid regime.
So The apartheid regime, at some height of its military power, found itself in its weakest political moment when it had to make this deal with the ANC.
They were more powerful, but they were also considering where they would be 10 years from now or 20 years from now, and several of those negotiators decided that it's better to make a deal now with Mandela than to wait 20 years and fight and then have another set of leaders. So the first is somehow beware the unreality trap.
We will be back with the Devil on Mask here on Ambazonia Calling. Our guest is Professor Elizabeth Vidat Darkhan. She is about the best expert we could find anywhere on the globe.
Oh, nah, the cracks today. Oh, nah, baby, my love for you, nah, baby girl, I say with you, I'm just surprised. My love for you, girl, I know if it take you out of sight. Baby girl, I do anything for you, eh. I do anything. Baby girl, I do anything for you, eh. Baby girl, I do anything for you, eh. Everything. Baby girl, I do anything for you, eh. I do for you. I do anything for you, eh. Baby girl, I do anything for you, eh.
Could you give our listeners some examples, a few examples of where pro-independence movements were caught in this unreality trap?
The most extreme at the moment is Syria. Syria is by far the bloodiest war in the world. Since 2010, about 100,000 people a year have been killed in armed conflict around the world, and over half of them every year have been killed in Syria. The critical mistake is that there is, like with many revolutionary movements, there was a diaspora-based group, actually many of them, which found relationships with various sponsoring states. So there were groups that found Turkish support, there were groups that found Saudi support, there were groups that found Qatari support, there were groups that found Emirati support, but what they didn't have was Syrian support. And so many people claimed to speak for so many others.
What trick did the government of Assad in Syria play in this case?
The government sort of pretended to engage with them and then just prosecuted the war exactly as they had intended to prosecute it, but there was this surface sham of a negotiation.
What particular mistake did they make?
So the negotiation ended up, the mediation, which is still going on, essentially became a cover for the regime of Bashar al-Assad to continue the war exactly the way he wanted, without any further requirement to compromise.
Is there not always a danger when negotiations happen that groups begin to splinter, like we see in the Ambazonian case, you get IG1, IG2, that kind of stuff? Is it not a big danger that all these factions then just start creating?
If there is too much divergence between those who are able to assemble a negotiation from outside and those who are waging the struggle, whether it's an armed struggle or whether it's a non-violent struggle, whether it's a political struggle, but if they're not organically connected, you are in the unreality zone. In the case of both the Darfur process in Doha and the Somalia process in Eldoret, participants realized that there was an incentive to create yourself as a group. So groups would split, or somebody, with a couple of friends and a few $1,000s would set themselves up with a website and so on, and then announce that they want to be a party to the process. The process grew out of control with the support of the international community, and the government was essentially able to divide and conquer. Yeah.
We will be back with the Devil on Mask here on Ambazonia Calling. Our guest is Professor Elizabeth Vidat Darkhan. She is about the best expert we could find anywhere on the globe.
Our youth demo, they can't finish. Our boys demo, they don't finish. From Manfred to Boya, from Bamenda to Southwest, no shade every day, oh, killing every day. people they die every day. Like say they been a chicken. My people prayer is the key. Oh, may we pray, oh.
Make we pray.
Oh, may we pray.
Make we pray.
Oh, may we pray.
Make we pray.
Ramagade, legede. Oh, Ramosagade.
Make we pray.
Mika Brazandala. Jesus.
Make we pray.
You mentioned to me before we got into studio that the second of these deadly sins is called overreaching. What is that?
You take positions which are stronger than what the real power on the ground measures. And so remember, always return, if possible, to the principle that negotiation will reflect the real power balance. And there's a particular reason for it that I don't know whether it applies also in your case, but applies in most of the cases. And so the two most famous ones are the Tamil Tigers, who withdrew from the Norwegian-led mediation process in 2003, and then were wiped out by the government, not immediately, but after a struggle. And the other is the Serb rebellion within Croatia, so supported by the government of Serbia. In both the cases of the Tamil Tigers in Sri Lanka and the Croatian Serbs, the Serbs in Croatia, the internationally brokered negotiations came up with a proposed deal. And in both cases, the deal was short of independence, but it involved high levels of autonomy within a defined area. And in both cases, the independence movement walked. And having walked, they lost international support, which actually they needed. Not centrally, but to a significant degree. It made the support of their diaspora, the funding by their diaspora more difficult, and the government was able to destroy them.
I believe that most Ambazonians are familiar with the case of the Tamil Tigers, but the Croatia story is less known, I believe. What happened in this case? What did they reject and why?
I have spoken to the Croatian Serbs. You know, that negotiation in 1995 was called the Z4 plan. So why did you reject the Z4 plan, which offered them almost everything, but not independence? And they said, well, we had both our own rhetoric was independence or death, and that was important for a lot of our people. And also we had people outside of our movement who were vying for power, who were just waiting to call us traitors. So when it became clear that we were going to get most of it, but not all of it, we were under pressure from our own, looking over our own shoulders to walk from the process.
Now that is the Ambazonian problem right there. People calling others traitors. Are you saying we're doomed?
There is actually quite an easy solution to that problem, but it's quite a common problem, which is, in other words, the main problem is not really the person over the table, on the other side of the table. That's the enemy, as it were. The main problem is that the dynamic within any movement naturally pushes you towards positions so extreme that they can't be sustained on the battlefield or on the ground. And that can lead to a super dangerous divergence. That's essentially what happens when the parties at the table are afraid or concerned that they can't accept the result that their own hardliners would be able to denounce them as traitors as. And that's a failure to engage those groups, but it's also a failure to engage the constituencies. And frankly, it's a failure of negotiating technique.
We will be back with the Devil Unmasked here on Ambazonia Calling. Our guest is Professor Elizabeth Vidat Darkhan. She is about the best expert we could find anywhere on the globe.
Welcome back. Well, look at what be back. Now I'm there. Now I'm back. You put some boon down, but something to find. The lamb with the lion heart, she just a lamb with the lion heart. She's a lamb with the lion heart, she just a lamb with the lion heart.
Let's move on to the third deadly sin, the third cardinal sin that independence movements should not commit.
My third one is what I call the unstrategic trap, which is, perhaps one that somehow undermines most movements to some degree, but sometimes terminally, which is when you allow the internal constituency issues to trump, to override the overall interests of the group. And allows the government party to divide and rule, or to not talk at all while it prosecutes a war.
Do you have an example where the pro-independence movements are afraid to engage, and yet the government does not want to talk?
So the classic example I always think strike me as extreme examples of it. One is the Palestinian process. So the Israeli government doesn't really want an agreement. It wants simply reality, as they call it, to push it out into the ground. And so it's most useful for them to be able to say that we don't have a partner, a Palestinian partner to negotiate with.
This would be funny if it were not so tragic, because what the Israeli government is doing with the Palestinians is exactly what the BOYO government is trying to do with Ambazonia. But in Ambazonia, as in the case of the Palestinians, there is someone to talk to at any given time.
Palestinians are plural, but there are two dominant groups, of course, the Fatah and the Hamas. And actually, although there's some rhetorical difference, the actual negotiating outcomes for which Hamas and Fatah will settle are actually not that different. I mean, both of them claim the whole territory between the Mediterranean Sea and the River Jordan, but in fact, either of them, and both of them, if offered, would accept a two-state settlement roughly based on the 1967 borders. The problem between them is not really what their strategic goals are. The problem between them is a power struggle, which is exacerbated by the supposed negotiating partner on the other side. And instead of figuring out how do we deal with a gambit to divide us, which is being logically presented by the other side, they fall for it. And as a result, to this day, I mean, it's 71 years since FAKO Bernadotte, the first envoy in Israel-Palestine, and 48 attempted to negotiate or mediate a two-state solution. And the Palestinians are as divided as ever.
We will be back with The Devil Unmasked here on Ambazonia Calling. Our guest is Professor Elizabeth Vidat Darkhan. She is about the best expert we could find anywhere on the globe. I know you've studied the Ambazonian case, but not in the same detail in which you have studied the Palestinian one. What I'm hearing you say is that the government party, in the case of Israel, is using the pluralism within the Palestinian movement, as they're using in the case of the Ambazonian movements, to prevent real negotiations from happening, getting the parties to fight against each other and prevent negotiations from even happening. Are there other independence movements that have suffered from such tricks by governments?
I always think another example of the same one is northeastern India. Since before British rule ended in 1947, they had not seen themselves as a part of the Indian civilizational. They have considered themselves a different identity. But their own identities are quite plural. They have Manipuris and Nagas and Assamese there. And basically that pluralism of the independence movements has been used by the government party to ensure that no talks will ever succeed. And so, for example, there are claims of some of the groups, sort of territorial and historical claims against some of the other groups. So the Assamese, for example, have claimed territorial claims against the Manipuris. And of course the government invests very heavily in encouraging the differences and plays favorites and chooses sides. And essentially what happened is that the peoples of northeastern India can never negotiate effectively because they can never form a united position, because they all have constituencies that say, first, As Manipuris, we have to resolve the dispute with the Nagas and the Assamese, which is exactly the wrong way to go. But once blood has been spilled and it takes on a certain momentum, it's really hard to undo.
I wish I was in a position to say that all such divisions have been done away with in Ambazonia. Happily, we've dealt away with the one that the Biya regime created, the Northwest-Southwest divide, but that division has disappeared as multiples of divisions have appeared along liberation movement lines, sadly. We will be back with the Devil Unmasked here on Ambazonia Calling. Our guest is Professor Elizabeth Vidat Darkhan. She is about the best expert we could find anywhere on the globe.
Ambazonia will be developed not by those our parents call the long crayons, not those empty big book people who call themselves elites, but by the army of hard-working citizens willing to roll up their sleeves and get dirty.
The foreign and local NGOs and journalists suddenly crusading for schools' resumption are not doing so out of altruism and would be hard-put to deny the charge of hypocrisy and self-interest.
So we've gone through the third of the 6 deadly sins. Could we turn to a fourth? What is it?
My fourth trap then would be sort of failure at the finish line trap, which is you all have a perfect strategy and a perfect set of agreement, and then when the prize is just there, then at that moment they fall over and right into the mud. And the classic example, I mean, there are actually several examples of it in current negotiation by independence movement. But the classic example, in my view, is Myanmar, Burma.
And what happened in Burma?
Since 1948, when the Union was formed after independence from Britain, the majority group, the Burmans, have had complicated, sometimes militarized conflict with a large number of ethnic groups that have sought independence. And for a long time, the Burmese government played divide and rule. And then the ethnic armed organizations, as they're called in that country, the EAOs, came up with a common strategy for when, in 2011, a new government came to power under Thein Sein. Thein Sein said, the country is paralyzed by 70 years of war. We've got to settle this. And all the ethnic armed organizations gathered together in neighboring Thailand, in the city of Chiang Mai, and they said, listen, we mustn't fall into the trap of the Nagas and the over the border and the Manipuris. Even though we have problems with each other, the Shan people, for example, have an overlapping territorial dispute with the Kachin people, which is quite a serious issue. They say we are going to reach an agreement among ourselves to park that issue, and we are going to have a two-phase process. We're going to have a process where we individually negotiate the terms of the ceasefire with the central government. So we're going to have separate ceasefire negotiations, but we all want the same result generally, which is actually, most of them are willing to give up independence in return for real federalism. But real federalism really means total federalism from their point of view. And they agreed to a strategy, and they even agreed to a team. And the negotiations culminated in an agreement in 2015, which is called the NCA, the Nationwide Ceasefire Agreement, between the central government and 14 groups. Well, right at the last minute, after they had negotiated together, they had nominated a single set of negotiators, and those negotiators then spoke to the 14 groups, and everything seemed to be fine. They got right up to the moment to sign, and 8 of them jumped in and 6 of them jumped out. And the government said, that's great. And so now they pretend to have talks about federalism with the 8 that never go anywhere, and they focus all their military attention on the 6. So, essentially, there was an effective negotiating strategy. It's a strategy that collapsed when the potential rewards and potential trade-offs became too real.
We will be back with the Devil on Mask here on Ambazonia Calling. Our guest is Professor Elizabeth Vidat Darkhan. She is about the best expert we could find anywhere on the globe.
So, restoration train is our freedom train.
We've got to do it together, building trust amongst leaders and making sure we make compromises that can take the Ambazonian people to a new horizon.
Oh, Holy Spirit, lead us on the restoration journey of our liberty.
The message we're sending out to all other Ambazonian groups is that we have to work together, because it's only in working together that we would achieve what we want faster.
Oh, Holy Spirit, lead us on the restoration journey of our liberty.
If we do not do that, we are going to be having South Sudan.
So, restoration train is our freedom train.
So we've now gone through 4 of the 6 deadly sins. What do you say is your number 5?
So I call it the failure to carry your own stakeholders, the failure to have the support of your own critical people. No peace agreement is ever welcomed by everybody. It has never been one. Even when you get independence, from the American Revolution right up to Kosovo, there are still people who don't like the result. So what you need, it's what the political scientists call like the minimum winning coalition, right? What you need is the critical mass of people who, if they agree, cannot be stopped. And usually that's, what creates that critical mass, some mixture of, popular charisma, military power, media reach, economic power. There has to be a critical mass. Otherwise, when you make a deal, people who are not part of the group can say, well, we don't like that deal. See, they're a bunch of losers. They made a bad deal, so we are going to make a better deal, or we're going to fight on for the cause to reach a higher goal.
Now, could you illustrate this with a concrete example that Ambazonians could keep in mind as the plan for their own negotiations?
One is in the Philippines. So, there was a 40-year civil war between the government of the Philippines and the Moro National Liberation Front, produced a so-called final peace agreement that offered them autonomy but not independence again, but quite extensive autonomy. But they didn't have a critical mass, and so another group emerged from it, which went to the diaspora and said, look, those bastards are traitors, and went to the funders and said, listen, we can do better than that. And they set up the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, which is basically just a splinter group of the Moro National Liberation Front. They managed to get together about 20,000 fighters and get foreign support, I think mainly from the government of Malaysia, and carried on the armed struggle. So then what you ended up with was a semi-reconciled group that had signed a peace agreement, which couldn't be implemented, and a splinter group that didn't have the critical mass to impose its will. So again, you had a government victory. A sort of version of it also is the IRA talks, the talks between the British government and IRA Sinn Féin. IRA Sinn Féin was not able to sell the Good Friday Agreement to all members of the armed wing of the struggle. And so those members formed themselves into a splinter group, the real IRA, so-called, that was able to carry on the struggle. In fact, it's in a grey zone because they haven't been able to really cause the peace to break down, but it has created problems for the Republican movement.
We will be back with the Devil on Mask here on Ambazonia Calling. Our guest is Professor Elizabeth Vidat Darkhan. She is about the best expert we could find anywhere on the globe. Ambazonia Calling. You are in the heart of the news shrine. Call us the Kalakuta Republic of commentary, opinion, and editorials. Out of studio here, before we came in, you said the sixth and the final deadly sin not to commit is what you call the timing trap. What happens in a timing trap? What happens to the movement?
Because of the complex internal dynamics, they simply don't launch at the right time. Yeah. So, I mean, in any normal plural situation, right, there's a balancing, okay, you know, which is where you need to be the train leaving the station, so that your own constituencies who are not really sure whether they should stay out or come in decide to get on the train. But if you leave too early, then there are some groups outside who don't see any reason to get on the train because they think they might have a better chance next time, or a better chance just continuing the struggle. And yet, if you leave it too late, then you may have missed your chance for a good negotiated outcome. And, for example, both Scotland and Quebec, the Quebec referendum in '95, sort of, in my view, pulled the trigger too early. That is, they were not quite at the maximum moment of ripeness when they decided to push it to the essential decision. And, you know, in life, so the train left a moment too early. And so, and, you know, their train drivers got impatient and made the train leave too early. And so enough of the voters in that case, not armed groups, enough of the voters stayed out that the whole movement, I mean, I think the Scots we will see again, but the Quebec movement basically died.
We will be back with the Devil on Mask here on Ambazonia Calling. Our guest is Professor Elizabeth Vidat Darkhan. She is about the best expert we could find anywhere on the globe. Thank you very much for walking us through those deadly sins. It is a very fascinating around-the-world survey of what pro-independence movements did wrong. Now, could we perhaps look at some success? What should pro-independence movements do when they face negotiations in order to succeed?
And many of the successful cases are just the flip side of the traps, or the people who avoided the traps.
Now, in the earlier part, pluralism within the pro-independence movements was seen sometimes and very often as a handicap. Are there cases where pluralism was exploited as an advantage by pro-independence movements in negotiations?
One of the most successful of all the modern independence movements, which was both an armed struggle and a political struggle, is the Republic of Croatia. Now, the Republic of Croatia was massively divided internally between those who wanted an armed struggle and those who wanted a purely political struggle and who opposed violence. And it was divided enormously between left and right. And, you know, all of our countries have left-right divisions, but in Eastern Europe, particularly Southeastern Europe, they have much bigger implications. The right basically means those groups that supported, in this case, the Nazi puppet state during World War II. So there were a group of Croatian independence movement leaders who saw themselves as carrying the flag of what they call the NDIAN, the independent state of Croatia, which was a state created by Hitler in 1941, and a left-wing, a sort of socialist or social democratic movement that saw this much less in racial terms as in terms of a historic political struggle for Croatian independence that had been thwarted for centuries, and which saw the Nazi puppet state as a sort of Frankenstein monster. And the genius of the Croatian independence movement was that they managed to hold together the armed struggle and the non-violent political movement, who were full of important influences, particularly in the intellectual community and with foreign countries like Germany and so on. And they managed to bridge this incredible divide.
And how did they do it? Now hold your answer to that. We will hear your answer when we come back from the break. We will be back with The Devil Unmasked here on Ambazonia Calling. Our guest is Professor Elizabeth Vidat Darkhan. She is about the best expert we could find anywhere on the globe.
This is Ambazonia Calling.
We're back here at Ambazonia Calling. The last question I asked there before the break was, how come the Croatians were able to cement, unify all these various factions?
They did it by having a series of congresses at home and in in which they would just say, we will agree that we will dispute our major differences through an electoral mechanism once we are independent, and then we will have a negotiating charter. And the things they want in the negotiating charter are ABC, which were essentially building a legal case as well as a political case for independence. So starting with the need for elections within the Republic of Croatia, and then sequence a set of steps in the charter, which in their view would culminate in a unilateral declaration of independence from the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, which they made in 1991 and succeeded.
Let's go through the steps you said they took again, as I believe this could be very useful for Ambazonian movements.
So the first is the common vision, that is the groups that manage to set aside what, the opposite of the Palestinian case. Those who manage to set aside the huge things that divide us from the critical things that we have in common and that we are going to fight for together. And it worked incredibly well. And they really, to this day, the country is massively divided right-left. So the first is, if you think there are common vision that can transcend the enormous differences within the community, then a structured process within your constituencies to elicit what those principles are, and that everybody should be bound to those principles, can be very useful.
So your advice is for a common vision that transcends differences, a structured process under which these movements work with some code and some discipline, and with everyone being bound on principles.
The second one is to this question of diasporas having access to international negotiations, but the fighting on the ground often being done by other people. Well, the most successful of the movements are the ones that find a mechanism to either coordinate or unite, or in the most successful movements actually tend to be ones which have an armed wing and a political wing. The IRA and Sinn Féin were legally and to some extent institutionally separate, but in fact they represented a left hand and a right hand of an independence movement with a coherent agenda, where when talks break down they were able to apply military pressure on the field and so on. This can be interpreted as terrorism, so I'm simply talking about at the level of fact. I'm not saying I agree or disagree. I'm simply saying that the articulation of the political wing and the armed wing is what allowed them to negotiate successfully when they had to.
We will be back with the Devil on Mask here on Ambazonia Calling. Our guest is Professor Elizabeth Vidat Darkhan. She is about the best expert we could find anywhere on the globe.
Oh, na 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 na. The cracks. Rastaman love me. Everybody love me.
Ambazonia's freedom, Africa's liberation. Our theme is coined from the very teachings of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Independence of Ghana is not complete until Africa is totally liberated. If Ambazonia's freedom is not achieved, then Africa cannot talk of its liberation. So we have come to Ghana to start a new dynamism in the continent of Africa.
So Ambazonia has managed to put together these diaspora groups that are organically linked to armed groups on the ground, on ground zero, people who are able potentially to apply pressure, military pressure, or self-defense pressure in the event that negotiations begin to falter.
A similar example, in a way, is ETA in Spain, the Basque independence movement in Spain. They had a political wing, the Harry Bakasuna, and they had an armed wing, ETA. And they were formally separate, but in fact, they, when the government agreed to talk, there could be a ceasefire with the armed groups, and the political talks would advance. When the political talks broke down because the government said we can defeat it without that, then the level of military pressure would increase.
No lack of respect here for the efforts in the Basque country, but because they did not end up with independence, because they settled for federation or federalism, it's one that is of little interest to the people of Ambazonia. Could you give us another example that speaks to the issues of, prosecuting independence more successfully?
Another example of a positive one was Timor. There was a dominant armed group, FRANCO, that had been led by Shana Guzman, that had been largely imprisoned the leadership, or they had forced its leaders into exile. There was also a mainly peaceful or mainly non-violent, unarmed resistance on the ground. And there were also people who had claims that were short of full independence. They decided to create, for the purposes alone of the negotiations with the Republic of Indonesia, a negotiating group, a new structure called the CNRT. And the CNRT was defined as a broad tent. So it was a version of the Croatian formula, which is it allowed people to come in, whether they were armed or not armed, whether they were diaspora or they were local, and it established an executive where decisions would be taken on how to negotiate with the Republic of Indonesia, and in particular, when to make the final critical step of actually declaring independence.
We will be back with the Devil on Mask here on Ambazonia Calling. Our guest is Professor Elizabeth Vidat Darkhan. She is about the best expert we could find anywhere on the globe.
Ladies and gentlemen, permit me to reintroduce myself. Now Links, alongside Mike, Monster. We about to take y'all to where we come from. Mr. Uber.
K-Town one in the million. Stepping up and making all the zillions. Your name with a carry on. Mash up everywhere with a hustle on. Down here in the streets it's a crazy world. But we still gotta go back
From
home.
3 main roads, now 1 meeting point. In front 3 and 1 carry fui name na die. Buku de bar, from here we dropping sick bars. Home of the brave, night look more like daytime. So if you ask me, for here we get na 2 daytime. Yellow white, yes now they call on that. If Tombe draw, Lakers win, heroes lost, check 'em. If Tico beaten Bonge, Opopo beaten Jala. Ball for net, PWD we go qualify. We support us native fly. Even if for food, we go rich boy. Zambia. Beat Mount Cameroon, then bring the blessings from the chariots of the gods to Kumba. Dark shades, dark tales, call me Grand Cave of Yango Abikrofo, Boya Road, Capo, Mbonge Road already know, so I don't need no intro. Soldier from day one, and Eddie Bam Bimbo. Lost sense, I take you, then call you Mdimo. 2015, call I'm 35. At 60, and Eddie still sell. Boy, I get na boutique. How can I sell out? For big mob market, now you be the sellout. Back out, drop out, we here we let it snitch out. The bars give you blackout, lyrical knockout. Your crew just to freak out. Now screaming time.
One in a million. In a million. Stepping up and making all the zillions.
What I heard you saying just before we took that break, the musical interlude, was you were in fact chiming in on something that the people of Ambazonia have done. The liberation movements have now started a group called Team Ambazonia, a coalition that's open to all the liberation movements in the hope of constituting a group that is well structured, that is disciplined, that is focused on the things that unite us, not on the many differences that may exist between the groups. Now, with respect to the traps, we talked about, and this is a major quarrel among Ambazonians, is the timing right? Is this the train they should board? Could you speak to some example that borders on that clarifies that particular trap?
We mentioned in the traps those that screw up by getting the timing wrong or by losing to the more moderate or less radical elements. And that there is quite a simple solution to that, which I think Kosovo is the best example of. I don't know Kosovo, which is that the Kosovar community had a non-violent, non-armed resistance led by Mr. Rugova, who the LDK, which had established deep legitimacy across Kosovo. Then there were armed groups, loosely grouped together under the name UÇK, the Kosovo Liberation Army, which was actually a series of gangs. And they varied a lot from those who would have settled for significant autonomy within Serbia, because their legal case was relatively weak. Because under the constitution of Yugoslavia, they didn't have a right of secession, which the six republics did. And there had been a European ruling on how Europe would recognize states emerging from former Yugoslavia, the so-called Badinter Commission. And Kosovo didn't meet the criteria of the Badinter Commission because it was not a pre-existing republic. So the Kosovars were in a very delicate position, and there were many within the LDK establishment in particular who would have accepted it as an interim measure anyway, a high degree of autonomy, and they were necessary to the struggle because they brought international support and they created real institutions on the ground. Then there were the firebrands with the guns who said it can only be independence.
What you just described there, that sounds like Ambazonia. Could you tell me, how did they manage it? How did they sort it out?
Well, the way they held that together, which I think is critical for you, the United States basically told them, you will negotiate without defining the end state. Everybody knows you're an independence movement and you say it and everything, but you will not insist that it's on the agenda, that you will define progressive degrees of self-government. And this became a formula that it became convenient for everybody to go on. So there were, I think they were called provisional institutions of self-government established with no defined end state of independence there. And that allowed the government of Serbia to sort of negotiate, and it allowed those who were in the armed struggle saying independence or death to sit at the same table with those sort of urban intellectuals who might have accepted less. So the way they structured the talks became the key to their success. And they always talked in terms of going to the threshold just under independence. They would negotiate with the other side right up to that threshold, and then when they had got that and consolidated, when they had enough local and international support and the Serbians made a mistake, they would then unilaterally cross the line, which they did in 2008.
We will be back with the Devil on Mask here on Ambazonia Calling. Our guest is Professor Elizabeth Vidat Darkhan. She is about the best expert we could find anywhere on the globe. I know obviously that every territory, every liberation movement for independence, when they campaign, they speak about how unique their case is. There is a uniqueness about Ambazonia. They were a country of their own before they obtained independence. They have United Nations-backed resolutions. So some of these generalities do not really apply to Ambazonia, but we appreciate the education, we appreciate the debate, and the opportunity to learn from all of these examples. If you don't mind, I'd like to just take you back one moment to the case of the Philippines. In the case of the Philippines, again, one that does not apply to Ambazonia, they were settling for autonomy. The lesson I'm trying for us to get at here is that, 10 years down the road, groups that should have stayed together to negotiate, that splintered, had to come back 10 years later to negotiate perhaps the same deal.
The government made an agreement with the Moro National Liberation Front. Moro Islamic Liberation Front had broken away from it, denounced the agreement as not really representing the aspirations of the people, and had continued the struggle. Well, eventually everybody arrived at the same point, and a new negotiation opened, and a very similar agreement was produced 10 years later. And then the issue became, how do we get the fighters, 20,000 of them of the Moro National Liberation Front, to go along with the new agreement, which is they said, oh, we're going to get a much better deal, we're going to get full independence, but actually they got almost exactly the same deal.
This is our longest interview on the Devil on Mask so far, but I don't want to let you go anywhere. But let's try to close it down a little bit here. If we're looking for closure, if we're looking for what Ambazonian groups are going to have to do, which is to negotiate, how do they approach negotiations? Because they're going to do it sooner or later. Is there a particular example you will recommend for Ambazonians to model their negotiations after?
Our Kosovo friends have the answer, is that it must be a sequential process in which each round reinforces the legitimacy of the process, reinforces the institutions of it, and reinforces the weight of those who are in the process. So the first is, in the pre-talks that you may be having in the next coming months, if I were in your shoes, I think I would, the basic is that there should be a series, there should be a sequential agenda from, humanitarian, ceasefire, interim arrangements, and then admit that political issues would come further down, knowing that at least under the current situation, it's better to consolidate your position so that, like the Kosovars, you're simply a state in waiting, as it were, when the opportunity arises.
We will be back with the Devil on Mask here on Ambazonia Calling. Our guest is Professor Elizabeth Vidat Darkhan. She is about the best expert we could find anywhere on the globe. It is not recommended that the political leaders themselves negotiate. This is a process to be handled by specialist people with long experience, especially in this field. But what kind of mandate do the political leaders give to the negotiators?
The negotiation team that you, I guess, are trying to assemble should have a right to negotiate according to certain terms of reference that somehow you will give it, but that should be subjected by ratification. But I think it's quite important, probably, that it should not be ratification at the very end. It should be ratification of each step, because that means that there is a legitimacy and that will accrue, and a mechanism to get people who were wavering or outside the process into the process when they see it moving forward. So, to give an example, the first step might be humanitarian, the second might be ceasefire. And that's clearly forward progress for your constituency, so it's quite important, I think, to bring that back somehow for ratification by the group as a whole. I see one, and probably an interest in sequential agenda, probably humanitarian, security, interim arrangements, and then political. Two, a team that is mandated to negotiate, but not to make an agreement by itself. Third, require that each of the agenda items be separately ratified. And four, insist and build a mechanism for consultation on the ground in the country with your people.
You were talking to me before we came into studio of the importance all through the process of these groups, whether they exist in the diaspora or on ground zero, of consulting back with the people, including using online consultation, some innovative ways online.
The last and probably most difficult and perhaps least realistic is to find a mechanism to systematically engage with the people who are left on the ground. So I think you should try and get in the pre-talks an agreement that you would consult back and have a right to consult back with the people of Ambazonia in various formats. And you know, there are very interesting, innovative alternatives for this. You know that you can establish now, I saw when I was the rates of digital penetration are actually quite high in your areas. So, and there are ways of creating now authenticatable, autonomous digital identities. So if you have somebody who is a certified registered Ambazonian with a digital online identity on their telephone or on their computer or whatever, and two people can certify any third person as a member, then you can create, you know, a de facto online consultation group which you can engage on the whole process in a democratic and structured way that will make them feel part of the process, but not leave them exposed to the wrath of the state, which might want to persecute them.
Thank you very much, Professor Elizabeth Vidat Dakhan. She was a guest here on Ambazonia Calling on the Devil on Mask.
Since the days of John the Baptist, the kingdom of God suffered violence. Let the violent one takes it by force. Shout on the ground king. Boom. You the cry, about what the cry. Don't tire, about what why.
Women are the crying, crying. We are the crying, crying. About what they crying, crying. We the crying. Una free me, eh. Women are the crying, crying. We are the crying, crying. We the crying. Una free me, eh. Women are the crying, crying. We are the crying, crying. We the crying. Una free me.
I'm tired of this, la Republic una free. Amango today inside pay, you know the free. We president on the side say all man of yay. Grand ambition, fuck that slogan, no yay. Presido, the pay jaga jaga. Una take all in the weavers, scatter. They need 102 students for Senate address. Una select 2 Anglo-Boss, escape address. Bia, Yang, Dijon, prison. Escape will know why man show BBC there for prison. They don't tell all we then start for colors Anglo-Fools. Fuck up the government, we ain't tools. Minister for communication, no fit talk good English. Southern Cameroon independence, that's my wish. No good third roads, no seaports, no light, no water, no airports. President, you overget fake promises. Wait till happen for like us, you bring us diseases. But men are the cry, we are the ask why. You don't come for that chair, you don't go shake, you go die.
Women are the crying, crying. We are the crying, crying. About what they crying, crying. We the crying. Una free me.
This is Ambazonia Calling.
Because you have your army of occupation out in West Cameroon, you believe that when the people will rise, even if you took the whole of the French army and added to yours, you will never bring them down.
And I call on all Cameroon soldiers to lay down their arms within Ambazonia and to turn their arms against the very system that has made them slaves in the land of their birth.
For more stories from around the world, go to the World Wide Web at themissionstribune.com, compassfreepress.com, and africafreedomnetwork.com.
Here is our letter to Joshua.
Dear Joshua, so the French are here. Finally. A shipload of soldiers, a truckload of body bags, a French foreign minister loitering in Gola, pretending to have come to inaugurate a bridge. But really there so that you can plot, or are they plotting to overthrow you? So first, grandson Manu Macron had to bend over backwards in order to just grant you audience. Kunkuma, is it how bad it has become? You see, this is what happens to Nkunkuma when everybody knows that your hands are still dripping with the blood of Mami Happy, Baby Martha, those reverend ministers, and more. No one wants to talk to you about it. Is that why you skipped Russia, Sochi? Everybody else was there, except you. Oh, maybe because you were signing the deal with the Russian firm, and of course the French masters were in town. How could you leave town? How could you leave the plantation when the slave master was coming to inspect? I feel your pain, Joshua. I hear the French are asking for everything. They want you to deliver every single thing before they can give you anything. They won't give you a fresh load of liquidity. They won't pour anything into the bank. They won't provide surety services, guarantee services for the Bread and Sardine Republic to continue to obtain grants, maybe credits from the African Development Bank, the World Bank, and the IMF. So your stock, the treasury, is empty. Did we hear right? So the French want to take back the port. They want it handed back to Bolloré. Is that it? I mean, forget the bidding process. The French don't care about it. Oh, I was forgetting. They asked you to refer to the 1959 Accord de Coopération and to the rules therein, especially rule number 1, which says the French shall not lose a competitive business bid. And rule number 2, which says if the French lose a competitive bid, see rule 1. That's neat. So I got a question for you. You know how they say in the village, when someone dies, someone has killed them. I want to know what has happened, because why did the chiefs of Fangbulu Republic hand over all of that charm to Patrick Ekema? Why did they take him to the shrines in the south? And why did they saddle him with the title of chief, with jurisdiction now over some neighborhood in hell? If the guy was going to be killed so quick, why didn't you tell him? He did not need the title. He already had the other title which he had stolen, plus the one he had stolen during elections. Was it not enough that Ambazozos were already after him? Did you also have to let Satan go after him and the witches of Fangbulu Republic? What the heck? I mean, it's terrible for you, because all of your people are either dropping dead or they're dropping to their knees to beg for I don't know what. Beg Ambazozos, beg not to be defeated, beg for your troops to be pulled out. How about you take the troops out, you pay reparations, then you go to the International Criminal Court, where, as you know, a cell has been ready for you right next to, the cell of Laurent Gbagbo and Charles Taylor. That would be great company. And that cell has been ready for years, I told you. Gaga Manaji, he showed up, he said, forget Ambazozo, it's gone. That's brutal. The man just wants to hurt your feelings. I mean, he could wait. He could wait for you to sign the surrender papers, let Ambazonia walk into the United Nations, hand over their flag, take membership, hoist their flag, sing the anthem officially, and you open at least one, maybe a consular service in Boya. Yeah, that should work. And then at that point, you could admit defeat, that it has happened. This guy of Gaga Manaji, he's always looking for the whale. In this case, he's just looking at one whale of a victory by the Ambazozos. He doesn't care. And then there's the guy up country who doesn't understand how to deal with that piece of cloth called your flag. I mean, he puts it to his waist, he puts it on the floor, he puts his knee to the floor, and he's begging all of Abakatan when there's no Amba boy in sight. Can you imagine the man on his 2 knees before one Amba boy had said, Watana wata, where then they? Look, Joshua, there's a lot that's being planned against you. I mean, besides the paperwork that's being finalized for the war crimes at the ICC, there is, you should know this is a secret I'm telling you. The Uncle Sam is working on those sanctions, additional sanctions, plus travel ban, plus freeze at the United Nations. They're working on that responsibility to protect thing, the Belgians. They're getting to you, Joshua. And then they're working on genocide prevention. It's a lot. If I were you, I would ask Ekema to come back and I would take his place.
From our studios here in Washington, D.C., our producer is Jeff McCoy. Our music today is from Ken Wanaku, the monk from Balikumato, William Ford, an ambassador of blessed memory, Eric Matisse on the web at soundimage.org, and Prince Ajwa Alemanji of Ajam Sonic Kitron, USA. Ambazonia Calling is a joint production of Africa Freedom Network, the Missions Tribune, and Compass Free Press. You can find us on the web at www.themissionstribune.com, www.compassfreepress.com, and www.africafreedomnetwork.com. Next Sunday is another day. Until then, keep the spirit, keep the faith, keep up the fight for justice and independence for Ambazonia. Stay Amba strong.